Hey everybody, you're listening to the Songwriters Across Texas podcast, where we get to know musicians through their stories and we get to hear some of their songs too. I'm your host, Karl Anderson. Today we are at Arlyn Studios in Austin, Texas, and my special guest is Bukka Allen. Bukka Allen was born in L.A. and grew up in Fresno with artistic parents who encouraged him to follow his dreams, whatever they may be. By the end of high school, he was a star athlete and a musician determined to get out into the world and mingle outside of the box of Fresno. He attended music school in Boston. After school, it was either Minneapolis for theater or Austin for the music. He told himself he'd give Austin 6 months. In Austin, he quickly befriended Will Sexton, whose career was already hitting stride. He played on Will's album along with some of the best talent Austin had to offer. Before he knew it, he was out on tour with Ian Moore, opening for the likes of the Rolling Stones in the late 90s. Since then, he's played keys on literally hundreds of albums, and he's toured with Joe Walsh, the Bodines, Joe Ely. The list is just incredible. But his self-released solo projects show a depth of Bukka's musicality and songwriting, and that's what he's going to treat us with today. And it's my great pleasure to welcome to the show Bukka Allen. Hey, Bukka, how are you?
Hey, Karl, I'm good.
What are you going to start us off with today, bro?
Yeah, this is Land of Dreams. Driving down the highway, his thoughts are drifting by. It's feeling like a ghost town that's been left alone to die, and vanished from a world is thrown to the side, vacant from the people that have only made him cry. There's a million miles of highway stretched across his face, with a million more to conquer and a million more to trace. And every line of sorrow is a sign from the winds of fate, and every crack of beauty is a map to a magic place. As a voice from a distant land calls out his name, and he knows it will never change, 'cause it's the myth of a place that creates his land of dreams, his land of dreams. Every answer has been known to never lie. For every mile behind him, there's a truth that refused to hide. He's moving through a world where a million secrets lie. He listens for the whisper that will guide him on his ride. As a voice from a distant land calls out his name, and he knows it will never change, 'cause it's the myth of a place that creates his land of dreams, his land of dreams. And he's seen the land of pity, he's seen the land of pain. Now he sees the land for lovers, and it's calling out his name. And the road flows through his veins as a voice from a distant land calls out his name. And he knows it will never change. Is this the myth of a place that creates his land of dreams? His land of dreams.
Thanks, Karl.
That was fantastic.
Thank you, Karl.
That's really
Thanks.
wonderful. And Mike Hardwick is man, he's a killer. And that was not a lap steel he was playing, right? I mean, that wasn't.
No, whatever Mike's doing, it's been such a beautiful mystery to me over time, and it's like truly puts me at ease whenever I hear that guitar coming out his amp and into the room.
It's such a
It's
great
beautiful.
sound.
Really beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah, is it the ghost guitar?
that's right.
Thing.
Don't try to explain it; just let it be.
Yeah. That song you said that was on your first record that you recorded.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, that was from the first time I recorded it was, oh God, in the kind of mid '90s, you know, and I just recently, the reason I kind of picked that song today was because I just have a lot of connection with it and Austin, and I recut it just before a really close friend of ours, George Reiff, passed away, and I recut it with George. And I think that session that I did with him I think it was the last thing he ever recorded.
Oh my Lord!
And yeah, so it was like what we did it for was for this piece that my dad has at Laguna Gloria called Road Angel. And Road Angel's it's a pretty amazing piece. For those of you who haven't seen it, I highly recommend just going out and spending an afternoon out in the sculpture garden out there. But
Where is that?
I think it's like out at the dead ends, like on 38th, if I'm not mistaken, Laguna Gloria.
Anybody?
I'm not sure. I mean, it's a beautiful museum and a beautiful sculpture garden right on the lake.
Okay.
And, but anyway, you can spend hours out there, and as you're walking around, you start hearing music kind of come out of the woods. And the music is actually coming from this cast bronze 53 Chevy that my dad built. And within the Chevy is this kind of state-of-the-art sound system. So it's like you literally stumble, you hear this stuff as you're walking around and come across
The
this
music.
abandoned car, the music. And what he's done, it's kind of like a living archive where he's gone and asked poets and artists and musicians from all over the world to write things for the car. So it's like a living entity, and every 6 months they
so
swap out the
incredible.
music. But
How is it? I mean, it's obviously there's a power outlet, but it's a 24
yeah,
hour.
the power. It's like, I mean, they dug a trench about 200 yards. I mean, it's like you can't see anything that's wired up to it. It's all camouflaged, and it's really amazing how they've done it. So you literally walk upon this car that's playing music out in the middle of nowhere.
Your dad has just, I mean, that was the piece of art. He's also, I mean, tell everybody who your dad is.
Well, it's Terry Allen's my father. He's an artist and a musician, and this piece is such a beautiful kind of representation of everything in a sense, because it's a beautiful piece in its own right, but it's
Right.
also,
It
I
honors.
mean, the music is unbelievable that's in the collection of music, and
Right.
and it's kind of like a breathing entity, you know. So I decided to cut this song Land of Dreams because it's about traveling and the road and
Yeah.
the idea of getting out and exploring, and kind of the idea of travel being, it can kind of entail everything that you can experience, running away from something, trying to get to something, it's kind of everything. And for me, it's discovering a land of dream of some sort. And I had done a lot of traveling with George, so it was like I couldn't think of a better person to make the recording with.
Right. George, I'm just so people know, George Reiff is just one of the great bass players that was Austin, the heart of Austin, and he passed away. I can't remember, about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's a time starts getting elusive with this.
Yeah,
pandemic,
it's true. Yeah, exactly. But it's so like when anybody, every musician in this town, like that's been here for any length of time, when he was here, they knew him, they were encouraged by him, and his playing was so tasty. And I know that, y'all had this sort of what I was calling, like, it's like the Austin Wrecking Crew, and, that was you guys.
He was just such a close friend, and one of the first people I met, and we met when we were really young, so we discovered a lot of things together.
Right.
That as you know, that just forms really, really deep bonds. And
the road.
I think I played music with him more than anyone else, just in terms of touring and stuff like that.
Right.
Over the years.
And the road is fun, but it's tricky, and it gets tiring fast, and like that. So yeah, but you bond like crazy.
Yeah.
Now you were somebody you wanted to kind of, you had a taste for travel from a pretty young age, right?
Yeah.
You grew up in Fresno.
I grew up in Fresno, California, which at the time when I was in Fresno, it was actually a beautiful place to grow up. But as soon as I started developing an idea of what I wanted to do and realizing that there wasn't much of that available in Fresno, I decided to split. And as a kid, I traveled quite a bit with my folks, and was able to travel internationally some, and that gave me a real distinct desire to move and see different places,
Mm-hmm.
And once I got out of high school, my folks basically kind of got us grounded in Fresno because they didn't want my brother and I, to grow up in Los Angeles, because basically it was just polluted to the point of really making people sick. Bale was getting really sick.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they split and just kind of established a really, really nice, stable place for us to grow up.
Right.
And then as soon as we were old enough to split, we did. We all did.
Right.
Everyone did.
Right.
Including my folks.
Right. And they're in Marford now, right?
They're in Santa Fe.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
Santa Fe.
Yeah.
Nice. I like that desert.
Yeah.
And you're so you grow up, traveling a lot. Your father's a working musician and touring, and your mother.
Well, he doesn't actually tour. That's the thing. We've been doing a lot of shows, but that's part of.
But when you were young, he was touring?
No, my dad actually never toured.
No kidding.
Never toured the road with his music. He did a few. I remember him going to Thailand for a little while to work on a beautiful record called Amerasia. And that was really the longest period of time he was gone. He was really focused on his artwork, and he always had a studio. And, it's interesting. I think he made that choice. I think his work and having a place where he could be all the time was really important to him, but it also was to our advantage because we weren't fractured.
Right.
Like so many people.
Right.
So many musicians are on the road. Their families have a tendency to get fractured, and we were able to avoid that, which was part of the reason why we're all so close, I think.
It's cool, and I guess he just didn't have that need to be on stage so much. Yeah, it was more like I need to create.
So. I don't think he was thinking about it that way. You
right.
know? It's funny. I think he thinks about everything as being his creative process. I think he really doesn't distinguish the difference between his songwriting and his artwork. I think he sees it as all one kind of connection, and that's hard for people to digest because we live in such a kind of.
You want to put everything in a box.
Yeah, everything just wants to be categorized.
Yes.
And the truth is that it's all interrelated, and it's all coming from the same process. And mindset is just a different outlet,
I totally, completely agree with that. And I look at it like that as well. I understand that, and it's true. I could see how people would be like, "What do you mean? It's that car or that piece of art."
It amazes me how hard that is for people to figure out.
Right.
I think and that's it was something. I was around so many people growing up that kind of just lived their lives by that idea.
Right.
You know, I mean, some were visual artists, some were musicians, but at the end of the day, everyone was just trying to stay as true as they possibly could to their desire to create.
Right.
Whatever it was they were doing, you know.
Did you ever read Henry Miller's Big Sur and the Oranges of Hieronymus Bosch?
I know it. Yeah.
The book was about when he moved up to Big Sur when he's like in his 60s, I want to say, or 70s, maybe even. Guy lived pretty long. But you know, and it was an artist play, and people were up there with writers and painters and stuff, and it was like I remember reading that as a 20, 21-year-old and just being like, yeah, that's what that's what I want to be a part of.
Yeah.
So you kind of really grew up in that.
I grew up in that environment, and I didn't ever really even think of it as being different than anything else until
Right.
I got old enough for other people to be curious about it.
Right.
I never thought about it in terms of being different from anything. I just, it was just an energy that I was always around. And
Right.
now that I've gotten older and I can kind of look back, it was an incredible energy that has kind of stuck with me and kind of just, I think we're all kind of we kind of take away a piece of our environment,
Absolutely.
And that was one of the really beautiful things about growing up. I never thought about it, but it kind of, you absorb it, and then I don't know. I'm sure it shifted my values, how I think about things, and I think about things. Everyone has their own process, but I mean, I'm still, I can see a painting or I can look at a song, and to me, it's the most valuable thing on the planet.
Yes, it's the thing that keeps you alive.
Yeah, it's those are the diamonds.
Yeah.
And most of the energy I was around was about that, and it was just, it was crazy and beautiful and
you feel
everything.
Have you been able to recreate that in in your own home and all that? And
I try to. I mean, I it's interesting because I have a 12-year-old boy, and I really do. It's funny. I grew up in an environment that all the things about it that had a real true element of safety and adventure and love, basically just love. It's that simple. It was a very loving environment. So I definitely want to try to create that when I'm raising my own boy. And I also love the idea of bringing friends in and people in that he can kind of see that energy.
It's like Uncle, whoever. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, my brother's an artist. Calder's coming in just a little while. He's just getting his career going.
Yeah.
He's just fantastic. And it's like, and to see all this energy kind of resurfacing through the next generation and even the next, it's pretty remarkable.
Well, that's the whole thing. So you were so fostered well by your folks, and you're like, now I can pass it on, and that's what the goodness of generations is. A lot of people leave their homes with damage because their parents are frustrated and they put pressures on their kids and stuff. They haven't fixed themselves, so they dump it on their kids.
Yeah, and I mean, and everyone has their problems, but at the end of the day, it's like there was a lot of generosity and a lot of love. It's like we all cared about each other, and we were living pretty normal life in Fresno.
Right.
But the people that were coming in and out were pretty extraordinary, and kind of being older and being able to look inside, it's like, wow, okay, there was some energy going on.
Yeah, and that you were really just blessed to have.
Yeah, I do consider it a blessing.
Tell me a little bit about your mom.
My mom's one of the closest people in my life. I mean, I probably talk to her every day. Just as far as, I mean, there's so many different elements to that question, but she was a real pioneer in certain ways in terms of how she approached her work. And the thing about my folks that was really interesting is they found their own path. Mm-hmm. And I kind of witnessed that, and I witnessed the difficulties in that and the successes and failures and all that kind of stuff. But like I say, just to see the energy of trying to move forward and trying to keep things going. She was always, she started acting in quite a few movies when I was in high school. So it was like, I remember it was difficult to kind of see her on the big screen when I was a kid in the sense that I don't know if I recognize her that's my mom.
Right, right.
And we would laugh about it. But, I mean, she started working quite a bit, and she was writing a lot. And it was just always around, And my folks were always supporting each other, and they do a lot of projects together. And I would watch, I would witness basically theater pieces being created, where my dad would start writing a theater piece, and then my mom, he would be writing it for my mom. And I would watch these things come alive, And then as I got older, I started participating in some of the theater stuff. And that's when you mentioned in the intro that I was interested in Minneapolis. It was because of the theater scene that was in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
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 And I went, they had performed a couple of plays there at the Guthrie, and then I became friends with some people that were actors that were,
right.
Working this play called Leon and Lentz, and it was like it was a really interesting scene, in like the mid '80s.
Yeah, I did. I'm a stage actor. I started as a stage actor, and I moved to New York, which but I grew up in Connecticut, so it was like that was the easiest thought. Like, oh man, it's not even an hour away from my parents' home,
and it was a beautiful place. I mean, do you remember the Lorning Cafe in Minneapolis?
Oh, I was talking about New York, but I don't know that. Like, I didn't know Minneapolis had all that. And you're sort of go like, I was like, I wonder how that escaped me.
Well, it was pretty great scene back then,
right.
And there was a lot of kind of experimental theater and stuff going on back then. But so I was young. I was like 17 or 18, but I would leave school and go check out stuff in Minneapolis because it was fairly close. It was closer than
Gotcha.
Texas
or New York.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I had to go to New York too, but I started getting involved with stuff in Minneapolis. So it was like I really loved the city, but it was cold, and I wasn't sure if I really wanted to keep going with that. I was
right.
So I tried Austin.
You tried Austin first, but part of the reason that you told me you did was that when you were in Boston at school, you liked to walk the Charles River, and there was something that was just sort of satisfying, and and then you saw that
was the component that made me move to Austin.
Right.
It's like I every day when I was in school, I'd walk the Charles and just I just always loved that. I love the idea of a big city having water running through it.
Yeah.
And I saw a photograph at the time. I didn't even realize the Colorado ran through Austin. I had no earthly idea. I'd heard about the music that was starting to come out of there, and I liked a lot of the music and the energy. And I'd known Joe Ely for a long time because he would, whenever he was touring in California, he'd come through.
Okay.
And but anyway, I saw a photograph of Austin. It was downtown Austin. It wasn't really a downtown, but it was what downtown Austin
looked
was.
Like
and it was an aerial shot, and the Colorado ran right through it, and I was like, I'm going. And it was literally because of the water running through the city. I've always enjoyed being around water.
Yeah.
There's something about it that puts me at ease.
I think that just tells me that, like, when people follow their hearts and their, like, what are you drawn to, and you say, like, just go, like if that's the thing and it doesn't have to make sense, or whatever.
Yeah, and it wasn't about, I didn't really even realize what I was wanting to do. I was writing songs and playing music, and I knew I wanted to play music. I'd been playing a lot of music on the East Coast, and I've always been one to, I think the beautiful thing about travel is that, I've never been a person to be locked into a place so much.
Right.
It's more about the people I'm around, and
right.
And as soon as I came to Austin and started meeting folks, it was like, oh, boy, I found the right place.
Yes.
I found the right place.
You sure did. Yeah. Cool, man. Well, let's do another song.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I'm going to try a song called Faceless, and this has not been recorded yet. It's I wouldn't say it's new, but it's kind of inspired by some events that took place just prior to the pandemic. It's called Faceless. Calm down, you summer sun. You're burning out the one you love. Your walls of smoke and floors of fire are burning out that last desire. She'll sage the beast to rid her wounds. Never clear those haunted rooms. They loom within a littered past, hide behind a fragile mask. Faceless. Walk away and don't look back. It's the only way you know to act. Your mama's hand was never there, and your daddy's stand was always scared. When they're the mirror you look within, you tear your face off once again, and now you're standing all alone. Wonder which one you'll now put on. Faceless. Faceless. Calm down, you summer sun. You're burning out the one you love. Your walls of smoke and floors of fire smoldered out that last desire.
Goodness gracious, Bukka. Man, I love your music. It's so great. It's so not only, like I told you earlier, that I was like, man, it reminds me of this, like that Roger Waters sort of like early '80s, and it's not like it's just a feeling that it's similar, probably moods and chord structures, perhaps, and your lyrics are super impressive. Like I really tear your face right off your head again, or what was it? Tear your face off once again. That's awesome, man. How do you approach your songwriting?
You know, well, the first thing I really try to do is just kind of eliminate all the white noise around me, you know, and I really try to focus on that just about every day. You know, I certainly don't write songs every day, but I do spend a little time really trying to just clear the white noise, because there's so much of it right now, you know, and then I usually just try to, you know, if something comes up, I touch my piano, I play my piano every day, you know. It's, you know, it's interesting over the pandemic, because I kind of reestablished the relationship that I have with the piano in a new, fresh way.
Awesome.
And so I spent a lot of time with it, and it's not time, I don't know if it reflects in anything in the outside world, but it sure helped me get through this incredible last 3 years, you know. And in the process, if I have, you know, if an idea comes up, I just try to jump on it. But I really try to focus on clearing the space, you know. It's like social media and everything that's coming at you, and in particular over the last few years with all the media and the negativity and the fear and the death and everything that was happening. It was a struggle to clear that white noise. So I try to, you know, it's funny, like I look at your notebook and it looks like a scribbled mess, and it's very similar to mine.
Mess.
And Yeah, and
Yeah.
but I can relate to that. It's like that's another thing that I would do is I write something down every day, and then if something, if something kind of goes into the direction of a song, I'll really try to sit and work with it. I've been writing quite a bit during the pandemic and trying to figure out
Good.
how to make another record and everything. But and then when I start writing, I just once again try to just stay as true as I possibly can to whatever it is I'm trying to express in that song. And that's hard to do.
It's really hard,
Yeah.
but I think like to me, this notebook is like probably the singular most important part of any aspect of what I end up with. Because I do a lot of different creative things too. I've written in all forms. I've acted on stage. I've acted, do voice or whatever. Like I'm very similar kind of thing. But if I can't, this is freedom. Man, this is nobody has to get this except me.
Right.
And it's
right.
my own map, and I know what everything on this, like these were my notes for this interview, right? And it looks like this, and it's but I know exactly how.
Yeah, and that process is something I can really relate to because it's like that's another thing that's been interesting. It's like just the idea, people talk about journaling and everything, but that's been something that I've been around my entire life.
Right.
And it's like, so it's just something that it's a go-to for me to just kind of jot down ideas and I really try to avoid, what happens to me sometimes is I'll have an idea and I'll let it sit a little too long.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to focus on being a little bit more deliberate in finishing things and then setting them aside and maybe editing them later. But that's one thing that I think that's just a discipline that I'm trying to get better at.
Yeah.
But the piano playing has always been just a very important element to my own well-being since I was a little kid, since I was probably 5 years old.
Oh, wow.
So it's been,
You started playing at 5?
I was playing, I remember playing, kind of sitting at it younger than that. And I remember what it did to me. And,
Wow, that's great.
So, and it still happens. That's
cool,
so incredible about it. It's like,
That's cool.
there's like this incredible, I don't even want to say it's a youthfulness or naivete or I don't know what it is. It's like it's something that's just very pure that helps me. It helps me to touch that thing from time to time.
Yeah, I don't even know how to explain that, but yeah, I mean it's a gorgeous sensation. I guess so. When I turned 4, I heard a voice for the first time, my conscious voice, and it said, "You're 4."
Oh,
that was it. That's all I remember.
That was yesterday, right?
Yeah, it was pretty much. But no, but the voice doesn't sound any different.
Yeah. I know.
Voice.
That's a really interesting thing that you just said because I think there are parts of ourselves, obviously you change through experiences, but it's more your perception. But like the core things about how I walked the planet, I remember feeling when I was a little kid.
Yes.
And they just kind of grew over time, And there were certain things that alter and shift and change. Everything's changing around you, but there are these core elements, and that's one of them for me. It was like I just always felt it was kind of it was basically a place where I could go and emotionally feel like I could express whatever the hell I wanted to.
Right.
When I was a kid.
And you were safe.
Yeah, and I could do it on my own, and I did, and I didn't really care if people were listening to it or not. But I was always giving something back that I was putting into it.
Yeah.
Whether it was good or not, that wasn't really the point. It was more the relationship of getting that energy out somehow.
Yeah, totally. That's cool. Let's talk about some of the people you've got to play with over the years. We do not have time to even remotely cover it. Like that's, to me, that it's incredible. And as a fan of, music, music to me was like one of the very first things that I got. It wasn't playing it. It was listening to it and having access to the Beatles and stuff like that. And it was like, this makes me feel better.
Yeah.
You know, but so some of the people you've got to play with, like Joe Walsh, was, you know, one of early in my life. I got a hold of his music and was like, oh, I like this guy, you know, like, and so you got to play with, you know, and Ringo, you know, like stuff like that is incredible to me, and I love to let people like share it with people because I know other people are the same thing, you know, like tell me about with that.
Well, I mean, that was an amazing experience. I was able to tour for a couple of years, I think 2012 to 2014, kind of supporting his solo record called Analog Man. Right. And he had hired a Texas band. He had hired George was in that band, myself, and Rick Richards, who's a great drummer. And anyway, it was a really fantastic experience. And at the end of the day, it's like, what he was putting out was so beautiful and such an intense, insanely pure energy, you know, and that's what I loved about him. And I remember, basically, it reminds me of all the people that I know that it's like they do a song or they play, and it's like every ounce of themselves is coming through, you know?
Right.
Yeah, Ely was like that too. The energy, it's just like there's no bullshit. It's just straight ahead, and so watching him and listening to him play was just fantastic. And you know, he said something to me once that was interesting. That, you know, he said that basically that he liked the energy of the band from Texas because it reminded him of the players in Los Angeles in the 70s. And there was something that really rang true to me, and it was more because it was more about the playing rather than getting the gig or hustling or trying to. It was more about the sincerity of the playing, and he was that full throttle, you know.
Yeah. Well, wow, what a compliment.
And I think most people that play music and I think they're attracted to that, you know,
right,
at all times, and I think they can call bullshit on it when it's not in front of them.
Right. Totally.
Instantly. You know?
Yeah.
Instantly.
Exactly. And not even bat an eye.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah. And I mean, you don't
no
have to,
apologies.
you don't have to say anything about it, but you can feel it and you know it right away.
Exactly.
You know? But that was a great experience, and you know, I've been really lucky because I've been able to tour with people that I really admire and really like.
Right.
Know? And for the most part, you know.
You got to tour early. Like things happened fast once you got to Austin. You met Will quickly. Will obviously was plugged in with everyone already. You know, he'd already done Will and the Kill, right? At that point, you know, and Will is Charlie Sexton's brother, Will Sexton. So the Sexton guys that are, you know, Austin's just finest, and so they brought you right in.
Yeah, I mean, it was like that relationship. You know, Will is one of my dearest friends. I love him. And he was really one of the first people that I met that was one of my peers here in Austin. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you know, through that experience, I mean, the history of what's going on, you know, in Austin. There's still a contingency of that heartbeat that made Austin such a beautiful, beautiful town. And Will was Will and Charlie both are huge components of that.
Yeah.
And Arlyn.
Yes.
Arlyn Studio.
Exactly.
Pedernales that was out there. It's like, I don't know how many times I've recorded here, working on different projects, and the history runs really deep, you know. And
absolutely.
But that experience with Will was great because we were really young, and it enabled me to start doing what I wanted to do, and you know, in terms of playing music and working on records, and not being kind of, it was my first kind of moment where I was able to quit my day job and just start really working as a musician and everything. And but it was also a very different climate. It was much easier to do that. Like right now in Austin, it would be impossible. This would be the last place I would come if I was in that moment in my life again, in my early 20s, trying to figure out how to navigate a scene. I didn't have to worry about money in Austin, right? Because everything you just didn't have to worry about it back then.
It was so inexpensive, and people were also like, come in here,
but that also creates
live
a
here.
really vibrant, you know, creative community.
Yeah.
Of which, you know, a lot of people who manage to get through it and do fairly well are still here. But it's changing, but everything changes.
Everything does change. I lived in New York City. When I got there, I lived on the same block where the Fillmore East used to be, like right there, and it wasn't there anymore. And it was like, oh well. I mean,
Yeah.
there's still a lot of stuff, but now CBGB's isn't there anymore, and you have to say, if I was lucky enough to be there, then thanks.
Yeah, and that was an incredible time, and I think that those situations, they're out there. It's just a matter of where you are in your life and all that kind of stuff. But that time, that those early years in Austin, this was in the early 90s. It was funny because I had been playing with some great musicians on the East Coast, and I was in school, so there was always this kind of weird academic umbrella over things, which I've always struggled with to a certain degree. And
I can relate.
And I came to Austin, and I met musicians who were some of the best musicians I've ever heard, and it was the antithesis of that. And it was like, I found where I need to be.
Not only that. Okay, so
not to take anything away from that umbrella, but at the same time, it was a sweet relief to be able to meet people that were just doing what I loved witnessing.
And they were gonna do it no matter what, and they were gonna try to do it as good as anybody ever.
Yeah.
And they succeed.
And that includes Mike. I mean,
it sure does.
It's like, my God. I mean,
Mike,
it's like the history of.
Oh yeah.
Of
Big
his
time.
playing and his contribution.
Mike Hardwick, Mike Hardwick,
who's playing with me.
Who's not on camera with us, but he does when he comes out and plays.
But
listen.
It's also part of the fabric of what I'm talking about. It's like there's these musicians that are here that have formed an element of what has made Austin really special, and what people still kind of declare. It's all these people that I'm talking about that really kind of
define
shape elements of that.
Well,
and there were deeper generations too, but it's like
yes.
I was really, really lucky to be a part of that before it started getting fractured because people couldn't afford to live here.
Yes, I do, and I got here right about the same time as you, so it was like
Casey.
And Casey Crowley, of course, my ex, but and coming from New York, we were our first thing was like, I think our rent when we left was only $750, and that was the East Village.
Yeah,
but $750 was still like. People were like, "You're crazy to live in that little place for $750, outside of the city." But I was like, "I'm living in the city. That's what you pay."
Yeah.
When we got here, the apartment was like 3 or 4 times bigger, had a pool up, like up a Greystone or something, and it was $675 or something. And we were okay, we can,
it gives you freedom to be able to really kind of hone in on what you're trying to do without it being, kind of eliminated because you can't afford something or something like that. I was able to play music all the time, and I still do. I'm very grateful for that, but it's like it's just a different climate. But that climate that during that time was incredibly invaluable, and it's like, and they're some of my closest, dearest friends in the world.
Absolutely. I want to talk about Mark Lanegan because you got to I'm Mark Lanegan, who just passed away a couple months ago. I'm just this album Bubblegum that he made. I had a copy of it on CD, and I played it so much, and so I know every note of it and love it so much. And but I never had the linear notes, and I got it on vinyl, and I'm looking at it, and lo and behold, there's your name on Hit the City, and I'm like, what am I looking at?
There's a cool record of demos that just came out too, of a bunch of different stuff we cut. That was a really interesting deal because I never met Mark when we were cutting the music. In fact, the guy that was producing it at the time, I don't know if he knew if Mark was alive or not. At the time, he couldn't find him. He had a cassette tape that was floating around that he had written some songs, and it started circulating, and we started these sessions. And I don't know all the details about how and who it went through and everything, and I don't want to get into any of that. But it was an interesting thing because there was a span of time, and I'm a huge fan of his voice.
Me too.
Love his voice. And but anyway, that came. Ian and I went and cut some stuff in Houston. Ian's
name was on there too,
yeah,
right?
And I remember I actually finally met Lanegan in Aarhus, Denmark. I was in Denmark, and he was at this festival. And I walked up to him and I said, "Man, I just have to introduce myself because I played on your record, and I really, really love that record." And he goes, "No, you didn't." He goes, "No, you didn't. You didn't play on that record." And I'm like, "No, I actually did." And then the next day I saw him again, and
Was he just busted?
no, I think he was disassociated with that record for a little while, and then I think once he went at the time, and then because it went through. I mean, there's a lot of people on that record, from PJ Harvey to Slat. I mean, there's a lot of different people that worked on it, so it passed hands, and I don't know how involved he was, but that's a question for someone else, not me. But but at the end of the day, I became, friend. We talked about it, and I told him what it meant to me, and then I saw him live in our house, and it was one of the most extraordinary shows I've ever seen. It was spectacular.
He was that good. I just got to see the Soul Savers and the Gutter Twins.
They're fantastic.
Jeff Klein was in the Gutter Twins, man. That
Coley was.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. What a great. You're the perfect guest to really capture the history and of my generation. So that was really our goal on the show, is to let people know what it's like. And so I'm just thankful that you were available to come in here today and share with us. And if we can just close us out with another song, I think.
I'll do a song called "Where We Belong," and I'll do it for my family. And
wonderful.
And it's also really nice to be in Arlyn. I mean, it's like this is a very true hub to the heart of Austin, Texas.
I agree. That's why we came here.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it's beautiful to be able to sit down at this piano, because I know it was Bobbie Nelson's, and what can I say? She was really one of my. I just loved her playing. I loved what she did all the way around, and it's pretty heavy. It's sitting here touching this keyboard, knowing that she did.
And she just recently passed away, and her energy is in here all over. But she's still here. She's still here.
Yeah, and I mean, the few times I've always come back to kind of look at this like. This is a song called "Where We Belong," and I'm going to send this out to my family. And right now, Calder, sitting right back there. It's going to him. The sky is the devil. It's ready to rain over me and you. The wind is a demon that blows through our hearts in this rain that falls. The ground was our angel, now it's covered by evil and pain. Once again, our love's like a river left here from the water. This land of hearts and bones. But the bones that surround us won't touch
clouds cast down shadows that battle for fate and strive to darken this place. The moon's like a serpent that spits down pale beams, yet a burn and poison this land. And the stars were our diamonds, but they can't seem to shine. The sky won't let them shine through. Our love's like a river left here from the water. This land of hearts and bones, but the bones they're for heartache, the hearts are for love's sake. So we know it's where we belong.
Y'all been watching this on the CW and you want to see the full episode, go to our YouTube channel. Songwriters Across Texas, of course. And we got other cool stuff up there, too, so check her out. Thanks again, Bukka.
Thank you.
Mike Hardwick, the killer. Good night.